Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 328 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where James had better get on, or I'll give him no crust for his supper.
Watch out, Alan. You know how that story ends.
Yeah, good point, actually.
Folks, I'm James Tauber, the Sage of the South, and I'm here with the man of the West who I fear has withered altogether, Alan Sisto.
I could still get up to some mischief, though. Now, folks, join us as we are reunited with a sleepy Bilbo in the last of our 3 episodes on Many Partings, the 6th chapter in Book 6 of The Lord of the Rings.
Who are you calling a sleepy Bilbo? Actually, I am quite sleepy.
Oh, I see. Took it personally.
Yeah, I am quite sleepy, so try to keep it interesting.
I'll do my best.
Appreciate it. No matter how you arrive, folks, you are all welcome here in the common room. At the Prancing Pony Podcast, we're reading and talking our way through Middle-earth, with plenty of speculation and bad jokes along the way.
We love deep dives into the lore, discussing our favorite themes, and a whole lot more.
But we try to keep it light and fun, like a couple of friends chatting at the pub. And we're glad you've joined us.
And I'm sure you'll be glad you joined as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time to head over to the North Wing. Now, we know that Barnum and Butterbur had a room or two in the North Wing at the Prancing Pony Inn that he made special for hobbits. This is the PPP's place made special for some of our listeners to give us all a chance to get to know them. Now, rooms at the North Wing are a bit hard to come by these days, so only our patrons at the Bombadil's bequest and Círdan's contribution tiers are eligible. So if you'd like to be one of the next patrons to join us, be sure to check out patreon.com/prancingponypod. Now, there's still a bit of a waiting list for the North Wing right now, but I promise, get to them all soon. Maybe some of them even with my co-hosts, but not today. Today, I get the privilege of doing one completely by myself. So, folks, please welcome tonight's guest to the North Wing, Joshua Barton.
Hello, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Joshua. It's good to see you again. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? And do your loved ones merely tolerate your nerdiness, or do they share it with you? That sort of thing.
Yeah, so I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, work as a program and database manager.
Okay.
I am really lucky that I have a lot of support from family and friends for my Tolkien mania.
Oh, that's good. Boston. So are you a New England Patriots fan?
To be honest, I grew up out west with family that supported the 49ers, and so I have a bit of a NFL, like a little bit, I'm all over the place.
Okay. I had to ask, just that's just my own personal bugaboo. So anyway, let's stick to Tolkien. That's probably our strong suit anyway. We do have to ask you the question that we ask everybody who comes to the Prancing Pony. When and how did you first discover Tolkien's works? What was your experience like? And then what is it that keeps you coming back?
Oh, love this question. So for me, the first time I remember hearing about Tolkien was watching a copy of the Rankin and Bass animated Hobbit film in probably 3rd or 4th grade. And I just thought it was the greatest movie I'd ever seen at the time, maybe other than Star Wars Episode 4. And so I was just talking to all my friends about it and how they had to see this movie. And we were in the school library, and the librarian told us, hey, have you read the book? And I had it. And so luckily she immediately had a copy ready for me to go, read the book, very quickly plowed into The Lord of the Rings, and have been absolutely hooked ever since.
I'm just curious, how old were you when you first encountered that?
Oh, I think that was like 3rd or 4th grade. So like 7 or 8, I want to say.
That's interesting because as you probably know from listening to the show, that my first encounter with Tolkien was also the Rankin and Bass animated special at around the same age. I think I was actually 9 when I saw it, but that was because it came out when I was 9. So I don't think you're quite up there in years, but I am glad that was your first experience as well, but that you got straight to the book. So what is it that keeps you coming back to Middle-earth?
I think for me, one of the things that really jumps out to me every time I think about, like, why is this so important to me, is when Frodo shares in the Fellowship about, I wish it need not have happened in my time. And I realized for me, like, how many times in my life I felt that. Just to give an example, I was 11 years old on September 11th, 2001 during the terrorist attacks.
Wow.
And it just felt like there's been so many moments in my life where I felt like, oh, if I had just been a little bit older when life started for me, like, things could have been better, whether it's the 2008 financial crisis or COVID. And it's just really helped me realize that things like The Lord of the Rings, stories that really help root me, that allow me to have that escape, that comfort, that consolation, and to really think about what's most important. And to realize also, like Tolkien, who lived through World War I, World War II, the atomic era, that fear, that things are never going to be better. The past is always just as complicated as the present. And so Tolkien stories for me throughout the Legendarium just really helped me remember that it's okay that things are never the way I thought they were. And that, it's all about what choices can we make.
That makes me think of Gandalf's line about, preparing the fields for those who will follow us, but their weather is not our concern. We don't have any influence over that, the circumstances that they'll have to face. That's really insightful. What is your favorite book in the Legendarium and why? And then if you have a favorite non-Legendarium work, what would that one be?
Yeah. So I've got to say, for me, I know the Fellowship of the Ring is not a book, so I will say books 1 and 2 of the Lord of the Rings.
I will accept that answer. All right.
But I just love that transition from The Hobbit into the story and getting to just the way that Tolkien very quickly wants you to know, hey, this world that you loved in The Hobbit, it's much deeper and there's more danger, but there's also a lot more exciting things to learn about. Like I think about when Aragorn, not Aragorn, it's Sam, when he shares Gil-galad's song. And just this moment where it's like, oh, wow, who's this new character? And I think I'm going to have to say for non-Legendarium, I love On Fairy Stories. Oh. When I started listening to the PPP, I was immediately struck how you started with kind of the theory behind why stories mattered. Yeah. And I went and read that, and immediately it's just something that for me I go back to just to remember like why stories important, why they matter.
Well, and I'm not surprised you mentioned that because in your earlier answer you talked about constellation and escape. So, a couple of the things that Tolkien said were so very important to fairy stories were important to you. And so that doesn't surprise me. It's a fantastic work. I hope everybody reads it. Here's a question. Have you ever given, I don't know if you have kids or not, but have you ever given a child, a pet, or maybe a car a name inspired by Tolkien? And if you haven't but wanted to, what name would you use?
Oh, so I have gone multiple times. I have had vehicles that have inherited Tolkien names. And so I think the favorite one I had was when I was a grad student, I had a little like 150cc motorbike. And that was my Shadowfax for grad school.
Wow. But exaggerate much?
And especially after the episodes where we talked about how far like Shadowfax actually could run, I was like, ooh, maybe it's more of a Bill the Pony, but at the time it was a Shadowfax.
Fatty Lumpkin. I love it though. That's great. That is great. Well, now we're going to go ahead and get into a lightning round of theoretically quick questions and answers. Who's your favorite character in The Lord of the Rings?
I know everyone says Faramir, but so I will
not everybody, but they should.
That's fair. I'll give a shout out to Faramir, but also I want to give some recognition to Imrahil.
Ooh, Imrahil's a good choice. I like him too. That's good. That's good. Would you rather hang out with the Noldor or the Teleri? Assuming this is the first age and the Noldor you're hanging out with are not Feanor and his sons.
Oh, that's fair. I'm going to have to say the Teleri. I love the ocean and the idea of being out on beautiful, fast ships. That sounds amazing.
Swan ships, pearl beaches. Yeah, I can't blame you. Rivendell or Lorien?
I'm a Rivendell person. Just the idea of being able to sit down and you hear the stories of the Second Age, especially from Elrond. And I'm sure Galadriel has some great stories too, but the idea of getting to hear about the Second Age from Elrond just has to have me in Rivendell.
And the library is a better place to hang out, I would imagine, the Hall of Fire as well. Yeah, that's fair. I think, like the Faramir answer to your first question, Rivendell does seem to get the larger share of answers on that one. What do you think happened to the Entwives?
I think they're gone, unfortunately. I think the way the Brownlands are described and just the loss that Treebeard has when he shares the story, I don't think they're around anymore. But I'd like to have hope.
Yeah, I'd like that too. It's nice to have those uncertainties as much as it is to have clarity. And last question, favorite author or book other than Tolkien?
For me, it's Herman Melville and Moby Dick. I think similar to The Lord of the Rings, it's a book that whenever I go back, it's like finding an old friend and something new there grabs me that I just think about and just sits on my mind.
I like that. That's a good one. And it's also the first time I think we've ever had that mentioned. So excellent choice. Well, thank you, Joshua. I really have enjoyed having you here in the North Wing. It's time for us all to head back over to the common room and join the rest of the listeners.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks again, Joshua. I hope I'll see you back here in the common room at our next Questions After Nightfall. For now, though, folks, we'll return you to the podcast in progress.
It's always great to spend time with our listeners here in the North Wing.
Indeed.
Alan, I suppose it's time to wrap this chapter up tonight. Would you lead us off?
All right, but I'll tell you what, I'm surprised at how quickly we seem to be going through this last book of The Lord of the Rings. How in the world are we finishing up Many Partings and only have, 3 chapters to go? This is this can't be happening. All right. Before I read, though, I just want to remind you all, we are in the middle of the conversation with the ever-charming Saruman. And I know that his voice was cracked and hideous last time, but you all probably have noticed that my voice is a little bit cracked and hideous. I don't know and cannot therefore promise that I will sound anything like Saruman, but I suspect.
Maybe you'll sound more like Saruman.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I just don't remember.
Acting involved. Yeah.
None whatsoever. I'm also just as mean and cruel and snarky and, I don't know, spiteful and petty and all of those things. Bow-legged and bloodthirsty and... All right, here we go. "Get up, you idiot," he shouted to the other beggar who had sat down on the ground, and he struck him with his staff. "Turn about. If these fine folk are going our way, then we will take another. Get on, or I'll give you no crust for your supper." The beggar turned and slouched past, whimpering. "Poor old Gríma. Poor old Gríma, always beaten and cursed. How I hate him. I wish I could leave him." "Then leave him," said Gandalf. But Wormtongue only shot a glance of his bleared eyes full of terror at Gandalf, and then shuffled quickly past behind Saruman. As the wretched pair passed by the company, they came to the hobbits, and Saruman stopped and stared at them. But they looked at him with pity. "So you have come to gloat too, have you, my urchins?" he said. "You don't care what a beggar lacks, do you? You have all you want, food and fine clothes, and the best weed for your pipes. Oh, yes, I know. I know where it comes from. You would not give a pipeful to a beggar, would you?" "I would, if I had any," said Frodo. "You can have what I have got left," said Merry, "if you will wait a moment." He got down and searched in the bag at his saddle. Then he handed to Saruman a leather pouch. "Take what there is," he said. "You're welcome to it. It came from the flotsam of Isengard." "Mine! Mine, yes, and dearly bought," cried Saruman, clutching at the pouch. "This is only a repayment in token, for you took more, I'll be bound. Still, a beggar must be grateful if a thief returns him even a morsel of his own. Well, it will serve you right when you come home, if you find things less good in the South Farthing than you would like. Long may your land be short of leaf." "Thank you," said Merry. "In that case, I will have my pouch back, which is not yours and has journeyed far with me. Wrap the weed in a rag of your own." "One thief deserves another," said Saruman, and turned his back on Merry and kicked Wormtongue and went away towards the wood. "Well, I like that," said Pippin. "Thief indeed! What of our claim for waylaying, wounding, and orc-dragging us through Rohan?" "Ah," said Sam. "And bought," he said. "How, I wonder? And I didn't like the sound of what he said about the South Farthing. It's time we got back."
Excellent. Very well under the circumstances.
Well, I'm afraid my vocal range is pretty limited today, so might not
Still
be the vocal reel highlight.
Still excellent. So we picked up where we left off on August 28th with Saruman and Alan's cracked and hideous voice as he lambasts Wormtongue for sitting down. Actually, that the poor Gríma reminded me of Babylon 5 and poor Zathras. No one listens to Zathras.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking very much, Zathras, not the one. Gríma, not the one either.
Gríma, not the one, yeah. His cruelty's finally beginning to show, but this, to be honest, can't have been the beginning of his mistreatment of Gríma.
No, it might just be the first time we've really seen it on camera, but yeah, it's pretty ugly. He hits him with his staff. He threatens him with no food. Not that the food he was going to give him, crust for his supper, is much to write home about. Later, though, much later, he implies that Wormtongue ate Lotho Sackville Baggins because he had been very hungry lately. That's, of course, at the very end of the Scouring of the Shire. I can't help wondering if Saruman starved him so that he'd have no other choice.
Yeah. I wouldn't.
That's pretty disgusting. I wouldn't put it past Saruman either.
No.
Anyway, that's just like, that's the kind of thing he would do.
Yeah. So Saruman declares that they're going to be heading in another direction. They sure don't want to share the way with this crowd.
No.
Now, Wormtongue, who until now hadn't been identified, but we all knew who it was, turns and goes past them, complaining about always being beaten and cursed.
Now, of course, neither of us, thankfully, have the firsthand experience to talk about abusive relationships. But I'll tell you, this feels exactly like that. I mean, Gríma hates Saruman. He wishes he could leave, but he can't, even when he's encouraged by Gandalf to do exactly that.
And the look of terror on his face when faced with that possibility, he's speechless and quickly gets behind Saruman.
Yeah. So as they're leaving, they pass by the hobbits, and Saruman stops and stares, only to have his, hard stare returned with pity. But he suggests they've come to gloat.
Mm-hmm. And urchin here, of course, means a small child, especially one who behaves badly and is dirty or shabbily dressed.
I feel called out.
I didn't call you an urchin.
No, okay, well, I'm not a small child, but I am one who behaves badly and is dirty or shabbily dressed.
Behaving badly, at least, yeah. I don't know. I've seen you dress well, so you could do it. Then he attacks their plenty, the food, clothes, pipeweed, as compared to his poverty.
Is this where I remind him that his poverty is pretty much
self-inflicted? Yes.
Yeah, I mean... So he has the gall to ask them for some of the tobacco, since I know where it comes from. And, the hobbits are still responding with kindness, right? I mean, Frodo says, I'd give you some if I had any. And Merry gets off his horse and goes digging in his bag for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Merry being the better man or hobbit or whatever. So he hands Saruman a pouch and says, though I'm sure Saruman would have known, that it came from the wreckage of Isengard.
Oh, yes, it did.
And let's remind ourselves of this by going back and reading that passage from the chapter, Flotsam and Jetsam.
Mm-hmm.
No, said Gimli. We are beginning the story in the middle. I should like a tale in the right order, starting with that strange day when our fellowship was broken. You shall have it if there's time, said Merry. But first, if you have finished eating, you shall fill your pipes and light up. And then, for a little while, we can pretend that we are all back safe at Bree again, or in Rivendell. He produced a small leather bag full of tobacco. We have heaps of it, he said. And you can all pack as much as you wish when we go. We did some salvage work this morning, Pippin and I. There are lots of things floating about. It was Pippin who found 2 small barrels, washed up out of some cellar or storehouse, I suppose. When we opened them, we found they were filled with this, as fine a pipeweed as you could wish for, and quite unspoilt. Gimli took some and rubbed it in his palm and sniffed it. It feels good, and it smells good, he said. It is good, said Merry. My dear Gimli, it is Longbottom leaf. There were the hornblower brand marks on the barrels, as plain as plain. How it came here I can't imagine. For Saruman's private use, I fancy.
Oh, almost certainly. It's not like he was dishing it out to everybody. Later, Aragorn expressed more than curiosity about this fact, right? He understood everything else the hobbits had told them about the battle that had taken place at Isengard while he was off at Helm's Deep. Everything except one thing, said Aragorn. Leaf from South Farthing and Isengard. The more I consider it, the more curious I find it. I have never been in Isengard, but I have journeyed in this land, and I know well the empty countries that lie between Rohan and the Shire. Neither goods nor folk have passed that way for many a long year, not openly. Saruman had secret dealings with someone in the Shire, I guess. Wormtongues may be found in other houses than King Theoden's. Was there a date on the barrels? Yes, said Pippin. It was the 1417 crop. That is last year's. No, the year before, of course, now. A good year. Ah, well, whatever evil was afoot is over now, I hope. Or else it is beyond our reach at present, said Aragorn. Yet I think I shall mention it to Gandalf, small matter though it may seem, among his great affairs. I wonder what he is doing, said Merry. The afternoon is getting on. Let us go and look round. You can enter Isengard now at any rate, Strider, if you want to, but it's not a very cheerful sight.
So how did this fine shy leaf end up in Isengard? For that, we'll go to the Hunt for the Ring, found in Unfinished Tales, where we read, Saruman had long taken an interest in the Shire, because Gandalf did, and he was suspicious of him. And because, again in secret imitation of Gandalf, he had taken to the halfling's leaf and needed supplies. But in pride, having once scoffed at Gandalf's use of the weed, kept this as secret as he could. Lately, other motives were added. He liked to extend his power, especially into Gandalf's province, and he found that the money he could provide for the purchase of leaf was giving him power, and it was corrupting some of the hobbits, especially the Bracegirdles, who owned many plantations, and so also the Sackville Bagginses. But also he had begun to feel certain that in some way the Shire was connected with the ring in Gandalf's mind. Why this strong guard upon it? He therefore began to collect detailed information about the Shire, its chief persons and families, its roads, and other matters. For this, he used hobbits within the Shire, in the pay of the Bracegirdles and the Sackville Bagginses. But his agents were men of Dunlendish origin.
And speaking of those men of Dunlendish origin, later on we read, "Some while ago, one of Saruman's most trusted servants, yet a ruffianly fellow, an outlaw driven from Dunland, where many said that he had orc blood, had returned from the borders of the Shire, where he had been negotiating for the purchase of leaf and other supplies. Saruman was beginning to store Isengard against war. This man was now on his way back to continue the business, and to arrange for the transport of many goods before autumn failed. He had orders also to get into the Shire if possible, and learn if there had been any departures of persons well known recently. He was well supplied with maps, lists of names, and notes concerning the Shire. He was the squint-eyed southerner at the inn."
Merry and Aragorn spoke about that southerner in the chapter Flotsam and Jetsam too. Merry talking about the battle and the men that he could see. "There were some others that were horrible, man-high, but with goblin faces. Sallow, leering, squint-eyed. Do you know, they reminded me at once of that southerner at Bree, only he was not so obviously orc-like as most of these were." "I thought of him too," said Aragorn. "We had many of these half-orcs to deal with at Helm's Deep. It seems plain now that the southerner was a spy of Saruman's, but whether he was working with the Black Riders or for Saruman alone, I do not know. It is difficult with these evil folk to know when they are in league and when they are cheating one another."
Now, getting back to the chapter at hand, after Merry offers Saruman the tobacco, Saruman doesn't exactly respond with gratitude, right? He's saying it's his, it's mine, it's mine, mine, mine. You know, I can see him now, like the seagulls from Finding Nemo,
with their Australian accents. Yes.
That's right, and certainly my terrible version of an Australian accent. I mean, I'm trying to think. There might be a few other things I can say. Shrimp on a Barbie, and
we don't call them shrimp. We call them.
I know
that's the biggest giveaway.
I know, isn't it? Yeah. Along with, now this here's a knife. I mean, I'm not trying in my Australian accent because I don't want to be mocked by the man with the really good Australian accent, but I'm just saying those are the only things I can say.
I do a pretty good Australian accent.
I would say
if I say so myself.
All right. Well, he calls Merry a thief on top of all that, right? It's mine, it's dearly bought, and you're a thief. Nice guy.
Yeah.
Here's your tobacco. Shut up.
But there's that foreboding statement at the end. Find things less good in the South Farthing.
Ooh.
Very ominous.
Very ominous. And of course, you know, he's been doing these dealings with, you know, people in the Shire, but he's not been there yet. That's where he's going next, as we'll know, in Scouring the Shire. But yeah, that's a scary thought, and I'm sure it's gotten everybody's attention. There's also that unpleasantness of the curse. Long may your land be short of leaf. Such a charming fellow. I mean,
and probably the worst thing you could say to a hobbit, right?
Seriously, wow. That is wrong. Saruman's character definitely fully revealed here.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Not if we, it's not like we had any doubts before that.
No, that's true.
Anyways. So Merry wants his pouch back, understandably, but Saruman just walks away with it, kicking Wormtongue and heading off to the forest.
In case you all wondered, Saruman is still alive and kicking. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Dum-dum. While Pippin's question serves to remind us what they went through at the hands of Saruman's forces, it's Sam's comment that's putting a sense of urgency into them. And I have to say, I'm actually kind of a bit surprised that it was Sam who caught that, or at least who said something about it first. I would have expected that to be from Frodo or maybe from Gandalf rather than Sam.
Yeah. Although we're getting to that part of the story where Frodo is saying less and less, and Sam is saying more and more. As of course we're going to see in a couple of chapters' time.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true indeed.
In the part we skipped, Frodo agrees that they ought to get back, but we have to see Bilbo first. So we're heading to Rivendell before the Shire.
That's right.
And Gandalf concurs with Frodo, and I wonder if he knew what was happening in the Shire or what would happen, whether he might have suggested going to the Shire first instead.
That's a good question. I mean, what would have happened had they decided to skip Rivendell and go to the Shire because of this sort of ominous, foreboding comment from Saruman?
Yeah, I mean, Gandalf must have known to a certain extent that something was happening because of his remarks to the hobbits that this is what they were trained for, right? He makes it very clear to Merry and Pippin that it wasn't all the great battles that they were ultimately, that was just preparation for this. So he must have known that something was going to happen, that they were going to be needed.
Yeah. And you wonder, I mean, so if they go there now, obviously Saruman doesn't go there now because he's not going to want to share the road with them.
Right.
So that changes some things. They get there, there's certainly a lot less bad stuff for them to overcome because Saruman's not there in person. But it's not as though the changes that we'll see in the Scouring of the Shire are all changes that take place between this time
and the time
they get
they're
there.
Already set.
They're already underway,
you know. So,
yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. What would have happened had they gone straight there? Other than Bilbo would have been very sad. Since he wouldn't have been able to celebrate his birthday with him. Anyway, he also concludes, Gandalf that is, that Saruman is now past the point of redemption. That's a pretty major thing for him to say, and it's something that we've talked about.
Gandalf in particular, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Of all people. I mean, you know, when we saw Gandalf facing off against Saruman and, you know, breaking his staff and casting him from the council and taking over the leadership position, even then he was still very much of the opinion that there was something in Saruman that could be redeemed. For him to finally write him off at this point, basically, is huge. And, you know, we've talked in the past episodes about the importance of redemption, and really everybody from Morgoth to Feanor, from Gollum to Denethor, right? They all get opportunities to acknowledge their wrong, to repent or apologize, and then to do the right thing. And so few of them do, which, of course, that's one of the reasons I love Boromir's redemption, but so few of them do. And here is one of the few times, and I think Gollum's is the only other one where it's like, okay, now it's over. Now there's no turning back. It's one of the few times where we're actually shown, that's it. There's no more chance for redemption here.
Yeah. Which makes it all the more interesting that Frodo's going to give him another chance in the Shire.
Yeah.
You'll talk about that then, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
But yeah.
And by the way, when I said what I did about there are very few of them where we're explicitly told there was no more chance for redemption, I mentioned Gollum. I'm thinking specifically in the letters. There are some things where Tolkien makes it clear that after Sam comes back and sees Gollum sort of pawing at his master, and that was like the last chance for Gollum to have turned. Yeah. We're not actually given that in the text. So just to be real clear about that. But to actually have somebody in the story say, that's it, we're past redemption, and to have that person be Gandalf. Yeah, I think we all know Saruman's past redemption.
Yeah, exactly. So in the meantime, Gandalf, has clearly recognized that there's some risk in simply letting him go. He could still cause trouble in some small, mean way. Not sure the Shire residents would say his trouble was small, but you can see what he means.
That's true. Absolutely. And we will still cause trouble in a small, mean way right after the break. Well, we'll get back to the trip north and some mind reading at camp in just a moment. But first, we want to remind you that there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony podcast than just us.
The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony podcast. Follow the page to get the news and new episode releases, but you're going to want to join the group for some great discussions.
Or if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/prancingponypod. On Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at prancingponypod.
And don't forget that you can get daily Tolkien content when you subscribe to Today's Tolkien Times on YouTube and all your favorite podcast apps. It's my short format daily show with everything from Word Nerd Wednesdays to Silmarillion Saturdays. Be sure to check it out at youtube.com/@TolkienTimes and follow @TolkienTimes on all your social media. James, now that we're rid of Saruman, for a little while at least, would you pick up?
Sure. Next day they went on into northern Dunland, where no men now dwelt, though it was a green and pleasant country. September came in with golden days and silver nights, and they rode at ease until they reached the Swanfleet River and found the old ford, east of the falls where it went down suddenly into the lowlands. Far to the west, in a haze, lay the meres and eats through which wound its way to the Grey Flood. There countless swans housed in a land of reeds. So they passed into Eregion, and at last a fair morning dawned, shimmering above gleaming mists, and looking from their camp on a low hill, the travellers saw away in the east the sun catching 3 peaks that thrust up into the sky through floating clouds: Caradhras, Celebdil, and Fanwithal. They were near to the gates of Moria. Here now for 7 days they tarried, for the time was at hand for another parting, which they were loath to make. Soon Celeborn and Galadriel and their folk would turn eastward, and so pass by the Redhorn Gate and down the Dimmerald Stair to the Silverlode and to their own country. They had journeyed thus far by the west ways, for they had much to speak of with Elrond and with Gandalf, and there they lingered still in converse with their friends. Often, long after the hobbits were wrapped in sleep, they would sit together under the stars, recalling the ages that were gone and all their joys and labours in the world, or holding counsel concerning the days to come. If any wanderer had chanced to pass, little would he have seen or heard, and it would have seemed to him only that he saw grey figures carved in stone, memorials of forgotten things now lost in unpeopled lands. For they did not move or speak with mouth, looking from mind to mind, and only their shining eyes stirred and kindled as their thoughts went to and fro. But at length all was said, and they parted again for a while, until it was time for the 3 rings to pass away. Quickly fading into the stones and the shadows, the grey-cloaked people of Lorien rode towards the mountains, and those who were going to Rivendell sat on the hill and watched, until there came out of the gathering mist a flash, and then they saw no more. Frodo knew that Galadriel had held aloft her ring in token of farewell. Sam turned away and sighed. I wish I was going back to Lorien.
Can't say I blame him.
Yeah, exactly.
So the first paragraph that talks about them moving on into northern Dunland, where no men now dwelt, is significantly longer and more detailed than how it was originally published in the first edition. Back then, it just read, September came in with golden days and silver nights. At last, a fair morning dawn.
There was also a paragraph that read, after they had passed by Dunland and were come to places where few folk dwelt, and even birds and beasts were seldom to be seen, they journeyed through a wood, climbing down from the hills at the feet of the Misty Mountains that now marched on their right hand. As they came out again into open country, they overtook an old man leaning on a staff.
Okay, so we did have that passage, but it was earlier in the edition that we're reading now, right? So Christopher Tolkien observes that these 2 changes, when taken together, mean that the company was actually still in Dunland when they came upon Saruman. Now, there's also a lot to be said about the Swanfleet River here, but we're going to cover that in the P5.
So now we're finally in Eregion, and the company can see the mountains above Moria.
That's right. The Tale of Years tells us that on September 6th, they halt in sight of the mountains of Moria. So we get a reference here that indicates that a little over a week, 8 days to be precise, have passed since they parted company with that charming guy and his humble manservant.
But now they stick around here for another week, so until September 13th.
That's right.
And it's because they really don't want this party to end. Celeborn, Galadriel, and the Galadrim are all about to head over to the Misty Mountains to get back to Lorien.
That's right. Now, it would have been easier and more direct for them to have gone with Legolas and Gimli, who went up the east side of the mountains, to head back to their respective lands. But they'd gone this way because they still had a lot to talk about with Gandalf and Elrond.
Of course they do. All 3 Elvish rings of power in this group, although we don't know that at this point as well.
Well, no, we don't. I mean, we know, you and I, the almighty lore masters.
Of course, the readers don't know. The first-time reader wouldn't know this.
Right.
And the bearers have some stuff to talk about.
Celeborn might be able to contribute a little bit. Poor guy. I mean, he's sitting there with, Elrond and Galadriel and Gandalf. He's like, where's my ring, man? What did I do? This little section is where we get the clearest example of something called Osanwe in The Lord of the Rings. Now, we talked about Osanwe at length all the way back in episode 139 when Gandalf was chatting with Frodo in Rivendell. He mentioned something about the barrow, which Frodo hadn't told him about yet.
Yep. So here's a recap, though, so you don't have to go back and listen to it, although you should.
Although, we do recommend that you actually consider that.
Exactly. Yeah. I think you should.
Yeah.
Osanwe Kenta, or Inquiry into the Communication of Thought, an essay published in issue 39 of the linguistic journal Vinya Tengwa. It's an essay by Tolkien in the voice of the Noldoran lawmaster, Pengalov, about Sanwe Latya, thought opening or telepathy. Believe it or not, this is not a skill that's limited to Istari or Ainur. In fact, we've seen elves do it before, Finrod, Gildor, and we'll see it again.
That's right. Now, according to the essay, technically even men have the same faculty as the Quendi, but it is in itself weaker and is weaker in operation owing to the strength of the Hroa, over which most men have small control by the will. Gee, thanks, Tolkien. What are you saying about us? Do we have, what is this, no self-control?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, he's not wrong.
Exactly. So the will for both parties to communicate is key to Osanwe. For communication to take place, Tolkien explains, if we call one mind G for guest or comer and the other H for host or receiver, then G, guest, must have full intention to inspect the host or inform it, that is, to retrieve or transmit information.
Yeah.
But knowledge may be gained or imparted by the guest, G, even when H, the host, is not seeking or intending to impart or learn. The act of G will be effective even if H is simply open.
And it's that openness that is the natural or simple state of a mind that is not otherwise engaged. In Arda Unmarred, openness would be the normal state. That's what Tolkien explains. He also adds, though, that every mind has, from its first making as an individual, the right to close, and it has absolute power to make this effective by will. Nothing can penetrate the barrier of unwill.
And that's clearly what's going on here. Looking from mind to mind as their thoughts went to and fro.
But now that all the things that don't need to be said out loud have been said silently, it's time to go. And the Tale of Years says that this is September 13th. Not forever, not just yet, just until it was time for the 3 to pass away.
Wearing the cloaks that they gave to the company all that time ago, the Galadhrim disappear quite quickly, until Galadriel held up her ring, Nenya, prompting Sam to express a wish to return to that land where time passes so differently, but speculating, would that still be the case? With the ring powered down now? I'd guess not.
I think you're right.
We'll talk about that more in the mailbag answer because
that's right. That's right.
There is
Absolutely.
an explicit linking of the ring and the time passage of time.
That's right. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, the ring, we know that the strength of the Elvish rings is preservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And certainly that's one of the things that we see happening in Lothlorien under the power of the ring as borne by Galadriel. So now that ring is essentially powerless, she's not going to have the ability to keep it, keep time at a standstill there, or not at a standstill, but, traveling at a different pace.
Yeah. I do want to bring up just one thing because it'll be relevant to our later discussion, which is that odd mention of the 3 rings passing. Because at this point, the reader, reading sequentially, has no idea where the other rings are. That's going to be the point of our discussion later on.
That's exactly
right. It's odd that Tolkien sort of slips in this, and I wonder whether you would actually pick it up if you didn't know.
That's a very good question. I mean,
we can come back to that.
It's sort of like just talking about a future moment, right? And they parted again for a while until it was time for the 3 rings to pass away.
Yeah, if you didn't know that the 3 rings were actually on those people that were sitting right there.
Right, exactly.
You may think, it's just when the 3 rings go, that corresponds to the time.
Until the end of time, until the beginning of the new age, until, right, it's sort of an undefined time in the future.
Right. Because we've already been told by Gandalf, and this again will come up at the end of the episode, that the end of the Third Age is intimately linked with the 3 rings departing.
Absolutely.
So we already know that. So maybe that's how people would read it. But it's interesting in light of the question we're going to discuss from the mailbag.
Absolutely.
Well, the mailbag will come soon enough. We have more to read in the meantime. So would you like to continue?
I would. At last, one evening, they came over the high moors, suddenly, as to travelers it always seemed, to the brink of the deep valley of Rivendell, and saw far below the lamps shining in Elrond's house. And they went down and crossed the bridge and came to the doors, and all the house was filled with light and song for joy at Elrond's homecoming. First of all, before they had eaten or washed or even shed their cloaks, the hobbits went in search of Bilbo. They found him all alone in his little room. It was littered with papers and pens and pencils, but Bilbo was sitting in a chair before a small, bright fire. He looked very old, but peaceful and sleepy. He opened his eyes and looked up as they came in. "Hello, hello," he said. "So you've come back. And tomorrow's my birthday, too. How clever of you. Do you know I shall be 129? And in 1 year more, if I am spared, I shall equal the old Duke. I should like to beat him, but we shall see." After the celebration of Bilbo's birthday, the 4 hobbits stayed in Rivendell for some days, and they sat much with their old friend, who spent most of his time now in his room, except at meals. For these he was still very punctual as a rule, and he seldom failed to wake up in time for them. Sitting around the fire, they told him in turn all that they could remember of their journeys and adventures. At first he pretended to take some notes, but he often fell asleep, and when he woke he would say, "How splendid, how wonderful. But where were we?" Then they went on with the story from the point where he had begun to nod. The only part that seemed really to rouse him and hold his attention was the account of the crowning and marriage of Aragorn. "I was invited to the wedding, of course," he said, "and I have waited for it long enough. But somehow, when it came to it, I found I had so much to do here, and packing is such a bother." When nearly a fortnight had passed, Frodo looked out of his window and saw that there had been a frost in the night, and the cobwebs were like white nets. Then, suddenly, he knew that he must go and say goodbye to Bilbo.
I've recently been rereading chapter 3 of book 2, and this is a nice sort of bookend to that, right? There's the initial part after the council. It starts the afternoon of the Council of Elrond, but it's the hobbits with Bilbo in the room.
Yes.
And it's when Bilbo gives Frodo the mithril coat and sting and all that kind of stuff. So,
which he'll try to do again.
Yeah. This is the nice reverse of that.
That is nice.
Yeah. So they get back to Rivendell, and they're part of the celebration as Elrond returns home.
Yeah.
The Tale of Years says it's now September 21st, 8 days after Celeborn and Galadriel headed home.
And quite some time since Elrond would have left. I don't know that we are told the date that he left Rivendell, but we do know that, the wedding was quite some time ago and it took him a long time to get there. So He's been gone several months. But it's not just September 21st, 8 days after the Galadrim left. It's 1 day before Bilbo's 129th birthday. And speaking of Bilbo, that's where the hobbits go, even before they've taken a shower, grabbed a snack, or hung up their cloaks. Kids these days.
And he's in his room by himself, surrounded by evidence of writing. He's in a cozy chair in front of the fire, now looking like the Man of the West, very old.
Oh, wow. Brutal. I'm like, wait a minute, where's he going with this? What? I mean,
it was there on
the notes.
It's
very old.
There on the page. I couldn't resist it.
No, you couldn't. Very old. The power of the One Ring has been destroyed, right? And as we read about earlier in this chapter, when Arwen was explaining, all that was wrought with the power of that ring is coming undone. So his his age is going to be now what it would have been without the ring. And in this case, 129 years old, which for a hobbit, well, for a person, that's unimaginable, basically. But for a hobbit, it is old. It is significantly old, but he's still not as old as the old Took. So it's not impossible for a non-ring enhanced hobbit to live this long.
Yeah, indeed. He's pleased to see that they've made it back, and it's in time for his birthday.
Yeah, what more could you want? And of course, he also expresses a wish to equal or eventually possibly even beat the old Took, who was 130 years of age when he died.
Yep. And, we've talked before, though, about the issue. You mentioned the undoing of the what the ring had done. And, of course, Bilbo's aging quickly because of this. We've talked before about the impact that would have had on Gollum.
Oh, on Gollum, of course. He was already hundreds of years beyond what he would have been able to sustain. So even had the ring not resulted in his death, right? Let's say Frodo managed to successfully throw it into the fire.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. Gollum dies
anyway,
very, very quickly.
Regardless, he may as well do something useful along the way.
Exactly.
Like destroy the one.
Exactly.
So the next day is the party, and the hobbits stick around for a while after that, spending most of their time with Bilbo, which meant not being with the others, as he stayed in his room for the most part.
Except for meals. That's very Bilbo-y sort of thing. It's a very hobbit-y sort of thing. Though I wonder, could he have had room service? Do they have DoorDash in Rivendell? I mean, what could they have brought to him,
They could have communicated with him. That's how you do the ordering.
There you go. A little Osanwe. Yeah, I would like, hold the mayo. Yeah, exactly.
Club sandwich.
Exactly. The four of them begin to tell Bilbo about all they did and experienced, which is going to be a long story.
Yeah. And as interested as Bilbo was, he would frequently doze off during the tales, waking up and asking where they were.
I understand that.
Yep.
I do love how the hobbits would go back to the moment in the story where he had begun to nod.
Yep.
So they were like paying attention, but not forcibly keeping him awake.
You can almost imagine
keep talking.
They'd pause knowingly, look at each other going, he's fallen asleep again. We'll wake up. Yeah. We'll wait for him. And then,
but we'll still keep going anyway. And then when he wakes up, we'll just go back and repeat ourselves.
But he definitely stayed awake for the coronation and wedding. He'd been invited, of course, but he said he had so much to do. And as we can all agree, packing is such a bother. I'm going to use that as an excuse now. Would you like to come to this? Packing is such a bother. I really can't.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, what do you put in? Do you get a check a bag? Are you just going to carry on? And here's the thing. Packing for a 3-day trip is a pain. Can you imagine you're packing because you're going to be gone for like 3 months down to Minas Tirith, and then you're going to stay a couple of weeks there, turn around on a 3-month journey home. That's a lot of packing.
Yeah.
Not so keen. It's not exactly what Arwen said when she explained to Frodo why Bilbo didn't come to the wedding. Well, he didn't show up because he didn't really want to pack everything. He had a lot to do. No, we know why he didn't. He was getting old very quickly. But he's trying to save a little of his dignity here, and we're not going to stop him. And I hope you won't stop me when I try to save some of my dignity later on. A couple of weeks go by, or close to it. The Tale of Ears says that it's October 4th when Frodo notices this change in the weather and realizes that it's time to go. And that is exactly where you're going to pick up.
Indeed. The weather was still calm and fair after one of the most lovely summers that people could remember. But October had come, and it must break soon and begin to rain and blow again. And there was still a very long way to go. Yet it was not really the thought of the weather that stirred him. He had a feeling that it was time he went back to the Shire. Sam shared it. Only the night before, he had said, "Well, Mr. Frodo, we've been far and seen a deal, and yet I don't think we've found a better place than this. There's something of everything here, if you understand me. The Shire, and the Golden Wood, and Gondor, and kings' houses, and inns, and meadows, and mountains all mixed. And yet somehow, I feel we ought to be going soon. I'm worried about my gaffer, to tell you the truth." "Yes, something of everything, Sam, except the sea," Frodo had answered. And he repeated it now to himself. Except the sea. That day, Frodo spoke to Elrond, and it was agreed that they should leave the next morning. To their delight, Gandalf said, "I think I shall come too, at least as far as Bree. I want to see Butterbur." In the evening, they went to say goodbye to Bilbo. "Well, if you must go, you must," he said. "I am sorry. I shall miss you. It is nice just to know that you're about the place, but I'm getting very sleepy." Then he gave Frodo his mithril coat and sting, forgetting that he'd already done so. And he gave him also 3 books of lore that he had made at various times, written in his spidery hand and labelled on their red backs, "Translations from the Elvish by B.B."
Oh, man, I love that. Going back to the beginning of the passage that you read for us, we get a recap of what the weather is like here in Rivendell in early October. And I want to say that this mention of one of the most lovely summers in memory is very interesting. Tolkien does seem to have the physical world respond to what's happening in the story.
Or vice versa, such as when Sauron's darkness was spreading.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thinking back to moments like Theoden breathing the free air again, or forward to 1420 being the best harvest in the Shire.
That's right.
It is like the earth responding to what's going on.
Absolutely. I think so. And I think that is what we're seeing here. The world is responding to the destruction of Sauron. So no wonder the summer was beautiful.
But it's autumn now, and the weather will be changing to rain and wind, and the journey home from Rivendell is not short.
No, it's not. I recall that on the way out here the year before, Frodo and the hobbits left with Aragorn from Bree on September 30th and didn't arrive in Rivendell until 3 weeks later on October 21st. Now, sure, they were traveling cross-country for the most part, but it is at least 400 miles, so it will take some time.
Still, as we're told, it's not the weather that makes Frodo want to get a move on here. The text says he had a feeling that they needed to get back home. And Sam also had that same feeling as we read a short flashback to the night before.
Now, not surprisingly, Sam starts by pointing out just how amazing Rivendell is. And he does it in a way that, well, I have to admit, I don't think I'd recalled until this reread. I'm not even sure I really caught this before. He talks about how this perfect valley really encapsulates a little of all of the beautiful places that Sam remembers. He identifies specifically the Shire and Lothlorien and Gondor, but even sort of the atmosphere of places, right? How does he put this? Inns and king's houses and meadows and mountains. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
What a way to put this, Sam. And it's very Sam way of putting it, too.
It is, but it's this perfect combination of everything that he likes about all the different places, all brought together. But he does express that same feeling that Frodo had, that we ought to be going soon, along with worry about his dad.
Yeah, I mean, who else is going to call him a ninny hammer if his dad's gone?
Exactly. So Frodo, of course, agrees with Sam's assessment of the beauty of Rivendell, except for the notable absence of the sea.
Now, I thought that was really interesting. The sea longing seems to be a newish thing for Frodo, doesn't it?
I think it's, I don't know that we've seen it at all before. He almost never talks about the sea. He of course, had the dream and so on really early on. But this kind of literally sea longing, as you say, it does seem really, quite new.
Yeah.
But remember, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, when Arwen gave Frodo the necklace and her seat on the ship, Tolkien wrote in letter 246 that Frodo thought that he had given his life in sacrifice. He expected to die very soon, but he did not, and one can observe the disquiet growing in him. Arwen was the first to observe the signs and gave him her jewel for comfort and thought of a way of healing him. Slowly he fades out of the picture, saying and doing less and less. And as I mentioned earlier, you can actually see that numerically.
That's literally true.
In the numbers. I've done the counts for the Digital Tolkien Project, looking at how often different characters speak. And Frodo, book 6 is where Sam speaks the most.
Yeah.
The proportion, it's funny. In the early stages, it's much more Frodo than Sam.
Right.
In the middle of the book, they're roughly 50-50, but by the end, it's almost entirely Sam. Frodo is really fading. And it's interesting to read that Tolkien was actually aware of the fact that he was doing this. It was quite a
He was absolutely intending for that to be the case, yeah. So slowly, Frodo is, as you said, fading. He's got a little of the Elvish in him now, it seems, right? I mean, this is...
Yes.
he's becoming more elf-like in the sense that he's fading. He's got this longing for the sea.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't think I'm reading too much into this. Do you?
No, it sounds very elvish.
It does.
I mean, even the use of the word fade in Tolkien's letter is clear.
Yeah. Slowly he fades out of the picture. I don't think that's an accident, even if it is in a letter. This all does put me in mind of that dream, and you mentioned it just briefly, saying, "Oh, he had that dream." What you were talking about, folks, that was the dream that Frodo had at the house of Tom Bombadil, and I'm going to read just a quick couple of lines. But either in his dreams or out of them, he could not tell which, Frodo heard a sweet singing running in his mind, a song that seemed to come like a pale light behind a gray rain curtain, and growing stronger to turn the veil all to glass and silver, until at last it was rolled back, and a far green country opened before him under a swift sunrise. Now, the dream doesn't explicitly mention the sea, but that is very clearly the reference, the glass and silver, and then the far green country on the other side of it.
Yeah. And of course, this is similar to the description that in the Peter Jackson films, Gandalf gives to Pippin about what it's like when you die, which is unfortunately probably not quite, because he's describing what it's like for elves, not necessarily for hobbits. I don't know what happens to hobbits. I don't know.
That's not what happens to Pippin. Sorry, if that troll comes through that door and crushes you into chunky salsa, you're not getting this trip to
there ain't no grey rain
lands.
curtain for you. Yeah. Well, maybe. I don't
Basically,
know.
Well, then what happens, Gandalf? I got no idea.
I got no idea.
Eru
knows. No one else knows. Not even Manwë.
Oh man.
Anyway, but of course, with all these thoughts, Frodo goes to Elrond to talk to him about it, and they decide they're leaving the next day, so October 5th. Elrond's very good at deciding you're going to leave tomorrow. You're going to leave in 1 week. He's good at making that decision of when people are going to leave.
That is true. Now, why go to Elrond here and not Gandalf?
Well, maybe that's why.
Right?
Because Elrond's the guy with the dates.
Yeah. Why not involve Merry and Pippin?
True.
I don't know. It's interesting to me that Frodo goes to Elrond to discuss their desire to leave. But clearly Gandalf is part of the conversation as well, because he's there and decides and says, I'm going to join you.
But then it's time for the hardest farewell of all, at least what we know up until this point. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Forget about those goodbyes. Those are going to be incredibly difficult. The hardest farewell so far.
Yes. Bilbo. He's been happy to have them around the place and will miss them, but this image of Bilbo as a doddering old man sure gets reinforced. Right? He's continually sleeping, and now he's forgetting things. That'll come soon enough, Alan, by the way.
Oh, man, I just can't get away from that. Okay. You are younger than me, but not by much.
Not by much.
Not by a lot, no.
I seem like I'm a lot younger than you, but I'm not really.
Wow, it just keeps coming. So Bilbo gives his mithril-coated sting to Frodo again.
I love the way that's put, though. He gave it to him again. And you're like, hang on a sec, how's that possible? Yeah.
Great. Why don't you show me where they are? Well, I can't find them, but when I do, I'll give them to you.
Point to the mithril coat in the room. Yeah,
exactly. Is the mithril coat in the room with us, you? Yes. So Bilbo also gives him 3 volumes of elvish lore that he's been writing. Now, lore master, sage of the South, what are the contents of each of these 3 volumes?
Okay. Well, one thing I want to make absolutely clear, because this is one of my rants and pet peeves. What we have as The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion and everything else is not literally the Red Book of Westmarch.
Right.
We actually lost you mentioned before the first edition of Lord of the Rings, we lost in the transition from the first edition of Lord of the Rings to the second edition, this sort of lengthy, not really frame story, but Tolkien talks more about the sort of conceit of the found manuscript in the Red Book of Westmarch. And he makes it clear that he drew on the Red Book of Westmarch for the writing of Lord of the Rings. And so I want to point out, it's not literally the text of The Hobbit and the Silmarillion and stuff like that, but it's what Tolkien could have used and translated into English for us.
Okay, that works.
In terms of the content, why 3 volumes? This is always an interesting question. Is there significance to the fact that there are 3 volumes? And does it actually include much of the story of the downfall of the Lord of the Rings?
That's the thing. I can't imagine that it would, because he's not taking he's
not taking notes. He's falling asleep.
Right. Exactly. And later on, he talks about how he likes to write poetry. I'm almost wondering if these are more like the Lays of Beleriand, or
I don't know, because it's interesting when, of course, we can't look at the published Silmarillion and look at the structure and say, well, it's got the Quenta Silmarillion in the middle and the stuff before and the stuff after, because that was completely Christopher's doing, structuring it that way.
Exactly.
So what Tolkien intended here, it's interesting. At various points when Tolkien did, like when Tolkien was trying to get the Silmarillion published, he did have collections of different stories together. But I don't think there was ever 3 groups. I think it was always more.
Well, and I wonder if there's any significance to that beyond the length of the volumes themselves. That's
true.
When he gets a blank book,
right,
it's X number of pages, and when he fills it up, he just starts writing in the next one, even if it's not a natural break.
That's true. It could have just been a comment on the amount that he had.
The size of the diary, right? It's, that's all it is.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, I'm wondering, okay, so it's Elvish lore that Bilbo's been working on since he's been here, translations from the Elvish, right? So that's what made me think, could it be older Elvish poetry? But it could also be what we know as the contents of the Silmarillion.
Yep.
Or at least stories from it, the great tales or something along those lines, at least.
Yeah.
I don't know. It sure would be nice, but we're not given that information. So in the part that we skipped, Bilbo gives gifts to each of the other hobbits. To Sam, he gives a little bit of gold, and I love the line, almost the last drop of the Smaug vintage. A really nice pairing of wine metaphors with drop and vintage.
To Merry and Pippin, he gives them some advice.
Yeah.
Stay humble.
That's right.
Don't let your heads get too big for your hats, is reminiscent of too big for one's boots or breeches. He also gives them pearl and silver pipes that the elves had made for him.
Those must be beautiful. I mean, elven craftsmanship.
You'd see them on eBay the next day.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm kidding. eBay doesn't exist in Middle-earth.
That's right. Thank goodness. Merry and Pippin making a killing just selling those things on eBay.
I was thinking more fake Silmarils get the Sons of Fëanor outbidding one another.
Okay, I'm liking this idea, by the way. A Middle-earth eBay where people are, you've got the mouth of Sauron selling...
Locks of Galadriel's hair.
Oh, no.
Gimli outbidding Fëanor,
Yeah, Fëanor is just, I don't care what it takes, I'm winning this auction. I mean, all the dollars, all of them. I'm thinking the mouth of Sauron selling, a game-worn jersey, the tunic that he gets. Oh, man. Yeah, there's more there. We'll have to come back to that. I like that idea. Maybe that'll be a new segment, Middle-earth eBay.
Okay, enough frivolity. Would you like to continue the reading for us, Alan?
I would. And then suddenly he nodded and went to sleep for a little. And when he woke up again, he said, "Now, where were we? Yes, of course, giving presents. Which reminds me, what's become of my ring, Frodo, that you took away?" "I have lost it, Bilbo, dear," said Frodo. "I got rid of it, you know." "What a pity," said Bilbo. "I should have liked to see it again. But no, how silly of me. That's what you went for, wasn't it? To get rid of it? But it is also confusing, for such a lot of other things seem to have got mixed up with it. Aragorn's affairs, and the White Council, Gondor, and the Horsemen, and Southrons, and Oliphants. Did you really see one, Sam? And caves, and towers, and golden trees, and goodness knows what besides. I evidently came back by much too straight a road for my trip. I think Gandalf might have shown me round a bit. But then the auction would have been over before I got back, and I should have had even more trouble than I did. Anyway, it's too late now, and really I think it's much more comfortable to sit here and hear about it all. The fire's very cozy here, and the food's very good. And there are elves when you want them. What more could you want? The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began. How far ahead the road has gone, let others follow it who can. Let them a journey new begin, but I at last, with weary feet, will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to meet. And as Bilbo murmured the last words, his head dropped on his chest, and he slept soundly.
So we're right where we left off, with Bilbo falling asleep and then talking about presents.
He falls asleep a lot in this chapter, it's true.
But this time, instead of giving anything away, he asks about the ring.
That's right. I've given you presents. Do you have a present for me? It's small, gold, ring-shaped. No. Frodo very gently tells him that it's been lost, right? I love the way Frodo says it, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't say, that's why we did all this, Uncle, or
he waits for
that
Bilbo
terrible
to
evil
remember.
ring. Yeah. That terrible evil ring has finally been destroyed. Of all people, Frodo understands the connection that a ring bearer has with the ring. And I think he's being very kind, very just beautifully gentle to old Bilbo here.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Bilbo eventually remembers that anyway.
Well,
That's the whole point of the council.
That's right.
But first, in a moment that recalls a similar moment in many meetings, Bilbo expresses the desire to see the ring again.
That's right. And as we read in many meetings, have you got it here? He asked in a whisper. I can't help feeling curious, after all I've heard. I should very much like just to peep at it again. Yes, I've got it, answered Frodo, feeling a strange reluctance. It looks just the same as ever it did. Well, I should just like to see it for a moment, said Bilbo. Yeah, very much like this. I just wanted to see it.
Yeah. And he gives a quick list of plot points before recognizing that there was a lot more he could have experienced on his journey all those years ago with the dwarves and Gandalf.
It is interesting that the horsemen and the Southrons and the Oliphants are mentioned in the same sentence as Aragorn, the White Council, and Gondor. Like, they don't seem to fit in terms of importance to the story, but he's sort of gotten them all mixed up there somehow. Yeah.
I think that's the point.
I think it is absolutely the point.
Yeah.
But Bilbo knows that his time for those sorts of things, the adventures and the journeys and things like that, it's all past now, right? That it's those years have gone. Instead, he's going to enjoy hearing about them while sitting around the fire, accompanied by the food and the elves. After all, as he says, what more could one want? I do like the idea. And there are elves when you want them.
Yes. I like the way he says that almost as if it's unexpected. It's sort of like, oh, and they even have elves. And I'm like, well, of course they do. You're in an elvish refuge.
There are elves here.
Exactly. You're in an elvish refuge.
That's right. Exactly.
Fancy that. There are elves.
But when you don't want them,
you can just go in your room and
exactly.
fall asleep.
Yeah. And order DoorDash.
Exactly. So we get the final version, or perhaps the last stanza of Bilbo's Road poem. And it's really worth taking a moment, I think, to talk through this.
I agree. And I think we'll be best served by looking at the previous versions. So we'll start with the one from The Hobbit. As all things come to an end, even this story, a day came at last when they were in sight of the country where Bilbo had been born and bred, where the shapes of the land and of the trees were as well known to him as his hands and toes. Coming to a rise, he could see his own hill in the distance, and he stopped suddenly and said, Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea. Over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star, yet feet that wandering have gone turn at last to home afar. Eyes that fire and sword have seen, and horror in the halls of stone, look at last on meadows green, and trees and hills they long have known. And I just want to talk. This is one of those things where there's not a lot to say up front. It's more like, well, now that it's changed, let's take a look at the changes. But I do want you all to note that this verse is about generic roads. Roads go ever, ever on is the first line in both stanzas. And then the poem itself as a whole, it's primarily about the places the road goes. Yep. Rocks and trees and caves and streams and snow and flowers and mountains.
The natural places that it goes.
The natural world.
The landscape, yeah.
Exactly. Not like the inn that we'll get to in the third version. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But 60 years later, Bilbo sings it again as he departs Bag End for the last time. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow, if I can, pursuing it with eager feet, until it joins some larger way, where many paths and errands meet, and whither then I cannot say.
Yeah.
So we've gone from the broad and generic roads, plural, to the very specific, the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier about the natural world, that's not really something that
come up
features
at all
in this
here.
at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just about his obligation, his duty, his task, if you will, to follow the road. I must follow this road. I must pursue this road. And I don't even know where it's going.
Yep.
And we see that before, while the feet were just wandering, now they're eager. There's a specificity. There's a desired goal to be achieved with eagerness. And it's interesting because we're never told what the road might actually go by here in this version of the tale.
Yeah.
Or the poem. Yeah.
And finally, this version, his journey is over. His paths and errands from the previous version have indeed been met. And Bilbo knows it's time to go to his well-deserved rest.
That's right. And his feet, which were again wandering before, then they were eager, now they're weary.
Mm-hmm.
And the destination of the road, well, it's not the wide, unknown natural world, the rocks and trees and caves and streams. And it's not even this abstract philosophical concept of like fate, or I have to pursue this road and meet what is coming down the road towards me, even if I don't know what it is. It's nothing like that at all. It's a very simple thing. It's the lighted inn.
Yep.
The place that's much like home, where he can get his evening rest and get his sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, shades of Leaf by Niggle. In
yes.
some respects, this sort of.
Yes. I wasn't going to bring that in because that's such a deep cut. And I thought, well, you know, one of these days I'll do Leaf by Niggle. But wow. Yes.
But, let others now follow the road. Bilbo's time is done. His reward well earned.
100%.
Yeah. And while it's also another indication that Bilbo's traveling time is through, weary feet headed towards an inn, it also feels a bit like a metaphor for his eventual passing.
It really does. And that actually makes the Leaf by Niggle reference even more. I mean, that really draws it in quite strongly. Yeah. I wonder if Bilbo's going to get some gentle treatment. I think he will. For more on those road verses, folks, go all the way back to episode 35. All the way back in season 1.
How old were you then?
Early. Oh, I was 12. Yeah. That was our 2017 Tolkien Reading Day episode, and I believe the theme was like poetry and song, something like that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. How old was I then? Younger than you are now.
True.
But older than you were at the time.
Yes.
So, well, why don't you go ahead and close out this chapter for us?
Would be glad to. The evening deepened in the room, and the firelight burned brighter. And they looked at Bilbo as he slept and saw that his face was smiling. For some time they sat in silence. And then Sam, looking around at the room and the shadows flickering on the walls, said softly, "I don't think, Mr. Frodo, that he's done much writing while we've been away. He won't ever write our story now." At that, Bilbo opened an eye, almost as if he had heard. Then he roused himself. "You see, I'm getting so sleepy," he said. "And when I have time to write, I only really like writing poetry. I wonder, Frodo, my dear fellow, if you would very much mind tidying up things a bit before you go. Collect all my notes and papers and my diary too, and take them with you if you will. You see, I haven't much time for the selection and arrangement and all that. Get Sam to help. And when you've knocked things into shape, come back, and I'll run over it. I won't be too critical." "Of course I'll do it," said Frodo. "And of course I'll come back soon. It won't be dangerous any more. There is a real king now, and he will soon put the roads in order." "Thank you, my dear fellow," said Bilbo. "That really is a great relief to my mind." And with that, he fell asleep again. The next day, Gandalf and the hobbits took leave of Bilbo in his room, for it was cold out of doors, and then they said farewell to Elrond and all his household. As Frodo stood upon the threshold, Elrond wished him a fair journey and blessed him, and he said, "I think, Frodo, that maybe you will not need to come back, unless you come very soon. For about this time of the year, when the leaves are gold before they fall, look for Bilbo in the woods of the Shire. I shall be with him. These words no one else heard, and Frodo kept them to himself.
Until it was time to write them down in the book. That we're
Right.
Yeah. So after Bilbo fell asleep, Frodo and Sam can see a smile on his dozing face as they sit quietly in Bilbo's room.
Yeah.
So sweet.
That's lovely. Yeah. Sam observes quietly that he doesn't think Bilbo actually got a lot of writing done during their quest.
Yeah, he's probably right. I'd say it's only been a little over 9 months since they left. I know, honestly, how little of my book I got written during the first 9 months that I was tasked with the job. So
Yep.
probably Bilbo's written more than I have if he's got 3 volumes of Elvish poetry to hand over.
Yeah. Bilbo, as it turns out, might not have been completely asleep. He opens one eye, then wakes himself up to respond to Sam's accusation or observation. He needs a lot of sleep these days, he says. After all, he prefers writing poetry to story.
And then he asks Frodo to tidy things up, take his notes and diary. Now, look, I know that there's nothing of Tolkien and his son here, but this was written 25 years before Tolkien's own passing. But I still see a bit of foreshadowing there, with Tolkien and Christopher, who, of course, tidied things up for him. And it feels like that, even if there's no intent in Tolkien's mind here to connect those two. But just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he even suggests that Sam could help out when it's put together into draft. Bilbo will take a look at it.
I won't be too critical.
Bilbo,
you don't got a right to be critical at all. If you're handing off your work to me, then
if you're sleeping on the job, you don't get to criticize the person that has to take over the job.
Seriously, man. But of course, Frodo, being Frodo, readily agrees. And then he suggests he'll come back soon, since the roads are going to be safer as a result of, there being a king and all.
Yeah, exactly. And so finally, on October 5th, Gandalf and the hobbits are saying farewell to everyone. Elrond speaks to Frodo privately, and Frodo keeps it that way.
Oh, that's right.
He says not to worry about coming back because we'll be heading to the Shire together around this time of the year.
This time of the year. The thing is, Elrond, it would be nice to put that in my calendar. Can you be a little more specific, please? He doesn't give Frodo any certainty as to when, like next year when it's the fall, or even where. He just says, we'll be there. We'll be in the woods of the Shire. The Shire's not a small place, Elrond.
Exactly.
I mean, which woods and which year? Anyway, it's actually going to be nearly 2 years from now, September 22nd, 3021, when Frodo and Sam will meet the last riding of the Keepers of the Rings in the Woody End. So I guess he just, maybe every fall, he just starts looking around, making journeys into the woods.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know
how he finds him, but yeah.
I think, Frodo, that maybe you will not need to come back unless you come very soon. For about this time of the year, when the leaves are gold before they fall, look for a heavy canvas sack in the woods of the Shire. I shall be with it. James, what does Barlin have for us today?
So Alina in Poland writes with a fairly simple question. Once again, not necessarily one with a simple answer, though.
Those are the ones we like.
Exactly. Did Aragorn know Gandalf had Narya? And while we're at it, did he know about Elrond and Galadriel as keepers of the other two of the 3 rings? Now, I love this sort of question because it's not just about the lore or what happens, but also who knew what and when did they know it. And on this question, that applies to us readers as well.
That's right. Now, we're going to start off with how the 3 rings are talked about in general and who knew what about them and their whereabouts. Obviously, the existence of the 3 doesn't seem to be a huge secret in world, at least among those familiar with matters of lore. I mean, it's right there in the Ringverse. I mean, it's right there. It's what it says on the tin. Gandalf tells Frodo in the Shadow of the Past that the 3 have never been lost. But Gandalf's not exactly giving away anything about the location of any of the rings, much less the fact that he's wearing one right there in Frodo's kitchen. Even in a conversation he's having with Frodo, where he's talking about all these secretive matters. Similarly, during the Council of Elrond, Glowin cries, "What are the 3 rings of the elves? Very mighty rings, it is said. Do not the elf lords keep them? Yet they too were made by the Dark Lord long ago. Are they idle? I see elf lords here. Will they not say?"
So Glóin mistakenly thinks Sauron made the three, but he knows that they're still around in the possession of the Elf Lords.
Well, two of them are in possession of the Elf Lords, yeah.
But clearly he doesn't know much more than that. And the text continues, the elves returned no answer. But Elrond does say the following, first of all correcting him. Did you not hear me, Glóin? The three were not made by Sauron, nor did he ever touch them. But note what Elrond then says. But of them it is not permitted to speak. So much only in this hour of doubt I may now say, they are not idle. And a little later, but all that has been wrought by those who wield the three will turn to their undoing, and their minds and hearts will become revealed to Sauron if he regains the one. So, in a secret council deciding the fate of the world, all Elrond will reluctantly reveal is that the three rings are not idle, and that there are those that wield them. Again, like Gandalf, he's choosing not to mention that, hey, he's one of the wielders.
That's right. Absolutely. I'm not telling you anything. Now, the big reveal from the reader perspective about who has one of these rings happens in the Mirror of Galadriel, where we read, she lifted up her white arms and spread out her hands towards the east in a gesture of rejection and denial. Eärendil, the evening star, most beloved of the elves, shone clear above. So bright was it that the figure of the elven lady cast a dim shadow on the ground. Its rays glanced upon a ring about her finger. It glittered like polished gold overlaid with silver light, and a white stone in it twinkled as if the even star had come down to rest upon her hand. Frodo gazed at the ring with awe, for suddenly it seemed to him that he understood. Yes, she said, divining his thought. It is not permitted to speak of it, and Elrond could not do so. But it cannot be hidden from the ring-bearer, and one who has seen the eye. Verily it is in the land of Lorien, upon the finger of Galadriel, that one of the three remains. This is Nenya, the ring of adamant, and I am its keeper.
So this is a pretty big deal if you're reading it for the first time, right?
Oh, yeah.
We now know where one of the three rings is and who's wielding it. Notice that Galadriel reiterates that Elrond could not speak of it. Right, of all the secrets discussed at secret councils, it seems the location of the three rings is the most classified secret of all.
Super duper top secret.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you consider that the identification of Bilbo's ring as the One Ring, or of Aragorn as the heir of Isildur, is discussed among a dozen or so people at least, it's remarkable just how secret the locations of the three rings are.
Yeah.
Right. But now the wielder of one of them is revealed, perhaps unwillingly. Right? It's only because Frodo is the ring bearer that he can even see it. And when Galadriel asks Sam, did you see my ring? Sam replies, no, lady. To tell the truth, I wondered what you were talking about. I saw a star through your fingers. Yeah.
No ring at all. I also want to point out, by the way, during the part where Galadriel declares she'll be set up as a queen, right? Dreadful is the storm and the lightning. The next paragraph reads, she lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore, there issued a great light that illumined her alone and left all else dark. She stood before Frodo, seeming now tall beyond measurement and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall, and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again, and lo, she was shrunken, a slender elf woman, clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad. And that's really interesting because what you see when you look at that is that this vision of the tall, beautiful, terrible Galadriel, right? The nuclear Galadriel from the Peter Jackson films is very intimately tied to the ring, to Nenya.
Now, the only other mention of this ring that we get before the passage that we read earlier in this episode is just a couple of chapters later. During a discussion on the Great River about the passage of time in Lorien, Frodo says, the power of the lady is on it. Rich are the hours, though short they seem, in Carath Galadhran. There Galadriel wields the elven ring. Aragorn quickly rebukes him. That should not have been said outside Lorien, not even to me. Speak no more of it. And I think this is really significant, especially to the question, the mailbag question. Now, it's maybe Aragorn just didn't want any spies to overhear, but why does he say, don't even mention it to me? It's almost like he's like blocking his ears going, don't tell me. You know, how does that mean he didn't know? Is this the
can't reveal what he doesn't know.
Yeah, that's the issue.
If he's captured or tortured and reveals that information, or if it's pried out of him mentally through some sort of...
He doesn't want to hear it. So it's hard to say whether he knew or not, but all of this just confirms just how much of a secret this was. I mean, this is the biggest secret in Middle-earth.
It really is. And now Aragorn knows that Galadriel is a ring bearer, whether he wanted to know that or not.
Right.
Yeah. Now, we do get a brief mention of the three rings in The Steward and the King, when Gandalf says that the power of the three rings is ended with the end of the Third Age. And there is a passage that we read in today's episode where a flash of light is recognized by Frodo as being from Galadriel's ring, as being from Nenya. But then we come to the final chapter in the book, the Grey Havens. Now, we may be accustomed to thinking about the details of the three rings, right? What they're called, what they're made of, who wields them, as just a fun bit of lore, something you remember for a Tolkien pub quiz. But remember that as the story is unfolding, as we're reading this as first-time readers, we don't know any of this. Galadriel having one of them was a huge reveal. And then we come to the final plot twist at the woody end regarding the three. This is the moment that we're talking about, when the leaves are gold,
when Elrond shows up
some other time, in some other year, in some of the woods there in the Shire. Thanks for the specificity, Elrond. Yeah. So at the woody end, and that's where we read, "There was Gildor and many fair elven folk, and there to Sam's wonder rode Elrond and Galadriel. Elrond wore a mantle of grey and had a star upon his forehead, and a silver harp was in his hand, and upon his finger was a ring of gold with a great blue stone, Vilya, mightiest of the three. But Galadriel sat upon a white palfrey, and was robed all in glimmering white, like clouds about the moon, for she herself seemed to shine with a soft light. On her finger was Nenya, the ring wrought of mithril, that bore a single white stone flickering like a frosty star."
Yeah. And just a few paragraphs later, "Then Círdan led them to the havens, and there was a white ship lying, and upon the quay, beside a great grey horse, stood a figure robed all in white, awaiting them. As he turned and came towards them, Frodo saw that Gandalf now wore openly on his hand the third ring, Narya the Great, and the stone upon it was red as fire. Then those who were to go were glad, for they knew that Gandalf also would take ship with them." And so the wielders of the other two of the three rings are, spoiler alert, finally revealed to us as other than Elrond and Gandalf, right?
That's right.
The people that have talked about the three rings the most, probably, of anyone in the story. Right? It's
rule about the three rings is we don't talk about the three rings.
Yeah. But now they're being worn openly and are visible to all.
Maybe because they've lost the magical power that kept them invisible to everybody else.
Doesn't matter anymore. Exactly.
Yeah. They're just a ring now. They're nothing more than a pretty thing on his finger.
Exactly. Yeah. A fun fact I discovered a few years ago at the Digital Tolkien Project when I was looking at Tolkien's invented words. The last two Elvish words introduced in the main text of The Lord of the Rings are the two ring names given here, Vilya and Narya. Yeah. It's the only time those two names are used. The roots of Vilya, Narya, and Nenya, by the way, air, fire, and water, respectively. But they're only mentioned here, and they're the last two new Elvish words to be introduced into the story. And it's at the end when they're about to go away.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think those of us who've read the story so many times, we're constantly thinking about the fact that, Gandalf kindling hearts and all of this, that's what he's doing. And of course he's got the ring to help him, but you're a first time reader, no clue until the very end of the story.
No idea. That keeps getting mentioned. And you're probably wondering, where are the other two?
Who's got them?
Yeah.
Gil-galad's dead. So maybe Círdan has one. I don't know what. So there are other things we know about these rings, like how Gandalf got his from Círdan and Elrond got his from Gil-galad. But this additional information is found in the appendices, the Rings of Power chapter in the Silmarillion and in Unfinished Tales. Now, in the Tale of Years in Appendix B, we get a slightly different perspective on the final journey to and departure from the Grey Havens. We're told that on September 21st, Frodo and Samwise set out from Hobbiton. And then the next day, they meet the last riding of the Keepers of the Rings in Woody End. And here, for the first time, the bearers of the three are given a title, the Keepers of the Rings. And then a week later, they come to the Grey Havens. Frodo and Bilbo depart over the sea with the three keepers, the end of the Third Age. That's interesting.
Yeah, I just notice how the end of the Third Age is marked in these annals, not by the destruction of the One Ring or the downfall of Barad-dûr or the passing of Sauron. The end of the Third Age is marked by the departure of the Ring Bearer and the three keepers.
That's huge.
It was only the very last day of the Third Age, when the three rings were passing to the west, that the secret was finally revealed of where the three rings had been this whole time.
Wow.
Yeah. So coming back to the original question, did Aragorn know who the three keepers were? I think it's entirely conceivable he did not know about Galadriel.
Until Frodo said what he did.
Although perhaps he could have guessed. I mean, you could speculate if the elf lords had them, who would be?
Well, yeah. I mean, arguably she should have one. I mean, she's yeah.
He may have known about Elrond and Gandalf, given how much time he spent with them.
Yeah.
I don't think we truly know, but I will say, if there's anything that might have been kept secret from Aragorn, this would have to be very high on that list.
I think so.
It does seem to have been the best kept secret in the Third Age, right? Even better kept than Aragorn's identity or Frodo's mission. Yeah. Right? I mean, what do you think, Alan?
I'm with you. I mean, I think he didn't know about Galadriel until Frodo spilled the beans. I almost suspected he would have known about Elrond before he would have known about Gandalf. And that's because of the amount of time that he spent in Rivendell and as close as he'd gotten to Elrond all those years as the heir of Isildur.
I mean, I wonder if it was something that was revealed when he was 20 years old and was told, "Hey, let me tell you who your parents are, and let me give you
the
let
me fill you in on all the details here." But I don't know. See, then again, right? He goes out and he spends all those years, as Thorongil, for instance, down in Rohan and Gondor. That's the kind of thing that maybe you don't say because you don't want, if he's captured,
right, he's about to go out in enemy territory. Yeah.
So I don't know. I tend to think not. I mean, Aragorn's not an idiot. So let's be clear. He would have been thinking or suspecting that Elrond and Galadriel would be at least two of the three.
Right.
And if he thought about it, maybe he still thinks Círdan is possessing the third one.
Yeah.
But maybe I don't think Gandalf would have told him, though.
No.
For the same reason that, in hindsight, I don't think Elrond would have told him that early on.
Yeah.
Because of the risk of that information getting out.
Yeah. And of course, I find it fascinating that as readers, we only find out right at the end. Except for that one paragraph we read in today's reading.
Yeah.
Where it does mention the three, the passing of the three rings passing. And it just so happens that the three keepers are there. Right? I don't know whether that was a little bit of a hint. I don't know.
I know, because you're right. When you read it, if you're a first-time reader, you're reading that as a reference to some future date not specified, right? I mean, it's not like the end of such and such a year or anything like that. It's at this future time, whenever that may be.
Right, because Gandalf said in the Steward and the King that the end of the Third Age will be when the three rings pass. Yeah.
Exactly. So we know that date is going to come. We don't know exactly when it's going to come, but it's in the very near future because now they're just jewelry. Do we know? Yeah, I don't. It's a nice little hint.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe Tolkien is giving us a little bit of a clue there if you're a first time reader who's very attentive. But
still, this is so late into it, right? So, we're not talking about Shadow of the Past, where Gandalf's talking about the three rings and forgetting to mention that he has one, or Elrond, rudely correcting Glóin and refusing, forgetting to mention that he has one. Yeah,
exactly.
But it's just funny because, as I said, we so often we have this information in our heads, right? It's that lore and pub quiz trivia kind of thing that you remember. What are the names? What are the color? What's the gems? What's the medals? All that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And you forget that that's not actually something that's a part of the story that's revealed.
I know, that's the thing. I mean, I think those of us who dive this deep into it happens, right?
Right.
For us, they sort of all get mixed together. But for a first-time reader in 1956 to be reading The Return of the King after having read the first two volumes, in the preceding year, you don't know any of that.
You had it the whole time. I mean, it's So great question, because it, even though the question was specifically about Aragorn, but I find it fascinating just this whole question of who else knew and didn't know.
Right.
And the
who
reader.
else knew? When did they know it? Clearly, the three ring bearers knew. I mean, Gandalf knew that Elrond and Galadriel were the other two.
Right. And Círdan obviously knew that he gave it to Gandalf. And
And I'm pretty sure Celeborn knew that Galadriel had a ring of power.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if that weren't the case. I would also believe that Arwen and her brothers would know about Elrond. But I think that's about as far as it would have gone on any sort of official basis.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting
Great
stuff.
question. Great question.
It really is. Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony podcast. But come back again next week when Sam wishes that his apple throwing skills had been more fatal.
Watch out. My fruit is registered as a deadly weapon, Alan. Folks, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team PPP. Editor Jordan Rennells, Barleyman Becca Davis, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, graphic artist Megan Collins, and website guru Phil Dean.
Now, please take a minute to check out the prancingponypodcast.com. That's where you'll find show notes, outtakes, Prancing Pony Ponderings, and our online storefront where you can get PPP merch, including chapter-specific artwork from Megan.
Please take a moment to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony podcast has always been about the books. So if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. We get a small amount of compensation when you make a purchase, and we thank you for that.
Indeed. And we also want to thank our patrons at the Círdan's contribution tier. I'll start with Demay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Zaksu in Illinois, Brian in Texas, Sarah in New Jersey, and Joshua in Massachusetts.
There's also Lucy in Texas, Erica in Texas, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen from Massachusetts, John in Japan, Livia in London, Robert in Arizona, Nick in Wisconsin, Lewis in South Carolina, Thomas in Germany, Craig in California, Bailey in Texas, and Kevin in Massachusetts. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed, thank you.
And make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, where the road has gone. And seriously, we're still looking for it. To barlman@theprancingponypodcast.com. And if you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question. Visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Please be sure to still email the question to Barleyman though. Even though Barleyman's been a lot more reliable lately, there's still a lot of email to sort through. We'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able.
Indeed. As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time,
go with the goodwill of all good men.